most people are in. There probably will be a few more will join us throughout the morning. Because I know I got a few messages from people that said they could join for some, but not all. So I suppose, look, it falls on me, number one, to welcome you all here this morning. And thank you very much for turning up to this national forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education funded seminar. When we originally planned this, we had hoped to get Doug over to the sunny southeast, and I think he was looking forward to getting over here as well. But unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. So we're doing it virtually via Zoom instead. So Ken McCarthy is my name. I'm the head of the Centre for Technology Enhanced Learning here in WIT, who's hosting today's seminar, but you won't be hearing too much from me. There's a couple of my colleagues on the call here as well, and we'll be mostly handing over to Doug to take us through the getting started with digital badges. Doug is one of the, I suppose, pioneers in this area. I've been a big fan of Doug's for a number of years. If you don't subscribe to his newsletter, Thought Shrapnel, you certainly should. And giving you, as a long-term subscriber, just giving you two little sort of tips. There's always a super secret link at the bottom of it. And he usually puts in a short limerick or haiku as well that I meant to rehearse last week's one, but I can't recall it now. But we're delighted to have Doug with us this morning. I know the day that he has planned for us is very exciting, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I'm looking forward to it. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to you, Doug, and you're most welcome virtually to Waterford. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken. Ken, you did make one mistake at the start. You said that this is just another Zoom meeting. It will not be just another Zoom meeting. This will be the Zoom meeting and the best one you attend today. I'm going to share my screen. If you've got chat, be verbal, verbalize stuff, but don't just shout stuff out loud during the session because that'll be distracting. Use the chat. Yeah. So if you want to say that, you've got a question about something, if you're like, I didn't really understand that, like put it in the chat. Don't just sit there in silence. Let's make this as interactive as we possibly can with 35 people on the call. There'll be 2 sessions. I'll go through this in a moment, and there'll be 2 breakout sessions as well. If you need to dip in and dip out, that's fine. You're always welcome to come back in if you need to step out for a moment. But I'm going to show a video, then I'm going to go through the structure of the workshop, and then we'll get started. So here we go. Let me just press the right buttons in the right order. Okay, so this is me. If you are interested in following me on Twitter, then I am at DAJ Belshaw. Can you see that okay, Ken? Is that working okay? Am I sharing the wrong view?
It's telling me you're sharing the screen, but it's just blank. It's just black, unfortunately.
Excellent. I think what I've done is I've shared the wrong screen. I realized that after I pressed the button. Happy days. Let me press the right button this time. There we go. Okay, is that working better now, Ken?
No, I'm still seeing just a blank black screen. It's telling me that you've started screen sharing, but I don't see anything on it.
Odd.
I did see something just there briefly before you.
Okay. I tried this before. I think my Zoom is playing silly buggers. Right, I will do one more try. How about that? Yes, no?
No, it's still the same, unfortunately.
It did pop up for a second there.
Yeah, I said give it a few seconds. Yeah.
Sorry about this, everyone. I'm on Zoom every day, and I think my Zoom Linux client is playing silly beggars. So give me just 2 seconds.
It's there.
That's
now.
working, is it? Cool.
Yeah.
Right. So here we go. Here's the video which I've been asked to play, and then we'll get started.
Doug, I think the video has frozen.
Oh, okay. Is it working now?
No.
I'm going to go out and come back in again. I'm very sorry about this. I think I'm going to share my entire desktop. Is that better?
No, we're just seeing Doug Belshaw start the screen sharing. If you like, I can share the presentation from here.
Yes, I think it's my Zoom Linux client. It's asking me to force quit. Well, this isn't ideal. Okay then, Ken, if you could share your screen.
Yeah,
if that's what's causing the issue. And I'll have to, yeah, if you just do the video bit, I'll see what I can do at this end.
No problem. Bear with me a second now.
Okay, then I think I've figured out what the problem is. So I'm going to give it one more go. And if it doesn't work this time, then, well, we'll see. Is that working okay now?
I'd love to say yes, but I'm just seeing it on screen.
It's not having it.
No, it doesn't. Just
okay. You just share your screen then, Ken. It's all good.
Two seconds now. I'm just going to find the
It's weird. I've been sharing my screen all week. Apologies, everyone. While we're waiting, then I'm going to put in the chat. If I stop sharing my screen.
It's working now, or it was. I think it's just when you go on full screen that your whole slides don't come up.
Oh, that's weird. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the slides in the chat. That's one of the wonders of Google Slides and stuff. So I'll put the slides in the chat. Ken, if you could share your screen, I'll just go through that and just talk through and do like the government do when they say next slide, please. So there's the slide deck. I've stuck it in the chat. You can follow it along. Ken, if you share your screen,
yeah,
apologies for the inconvenience. Is that okay?
Perfect. So
yeah, thanks, Ken. All right, so let's get started without further ado. So skip that the video and on to the next bit. Cool. All right, so a little bit about me. You might recognize some of the logos on the screen there. So after I was a teacher and senior leader, I worked in higher education for JISC. Some of you might know JISC from some of the resources they do and some of the work they've done in the UK. I worked on open educational resources, mobile learning, and digital literacy. Digital literacy was the subject of my doctoral thesis. I then went to work for Mozilla on the original Open Badges team. And also I was Mozilla's web literacy lead, following on from the work I did in my thesis. I've been a consultant for a number of years, for 6 years, and I worked for Moodle on a decentralized social network called MoodleNet until last year. Today, I'm representing my own business, Dynamic Skillset. You can find out more about me at dougbelshaw.com or dynamicskillset.com. I'm also part of a co-op called We Are Open, but maybe I'll say more about that later. Next slide, please, Ken. So I'm sure everyone knows how to use Zoom apart from me. This is how to exit and enter full screen. The chat's down there at the bottom. You can audio mute. You can do what I like to call face mute, where you can turn off your face or turn it back on. You can raise your hand using the reactions button, that kind of thing. And all the buttons that are there at the bottom. Some of them might be different depending on what permissions you've got. Next screen, please, Ken. So if you've got your video off, we know what that means. And if you've got it on, thank you very much. Come on to the next one. If you need to change your audio and video settings, if you're having issues like I've just been having, then you need to click on the little button next to you where it says mute or start video, and you can choose the right microphone or webcam or whatever you need to do. That might be particularly important when it comes to the breakout rooms, which we'll do later on. All right, Ken, let's get started. So the things we're doing today are these things here. We're going to go through kind of the history and usage of open badges. I'm going to talk about different terms that we use as well, talk about national, international practice, the use of badges maybe as alternative or micro-credentials, and also about kind of institutional badge, and we'll touch on that as well. There's only so much we can do in the 3 hours we've got together though. So we're going to start off with a Mentimeter, and I'm going to put into the chat what we've got there, and then I'll be able to see the results on the other side. Unfortunately, I won't be able to share the screen and see the results, but I'll be able to see them, and I can maybe share those as a image later on. So Mentimeter, let me press the right button, and there we go. Here's what you need to do. You need to go to menti.com. And you need to type in the code 123920. So the idea here is we'll find out who's here, and we'll find out why we're here as well. So there's going to be 2 questions. You go to menti.com, you can do it on your phone, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on your desktop. You type in the code 123920, and then I can see on my screen, and you'd be able to see if I was sharing my screen, the results so far. The options are higher education academic, higher education support, higher education IT, other education, or other non-education. So go to menti.com, type in 123920, and we'll go from there. I'm going to try and share my screen at the same time as Ken. Ken, can you see that at the same time as yours?
I can, but I can stop my share just briefly and see.
Yeah. It'd be awesome if that worked.
Yeah, no, I'm just seeing the, oh, I can, yeah.
Yeah, is that working now?
Yeah.
Happy days, there we go. Gremlins in the Matrix. Okay, so I'll give another minute or another 30 seconds, shall I say, to see who we've got in the room. We've got about 35 people, I think, altogether, unless someone has quit because I don't know how to use technology. Another 10 seconds. 26 people. Okay. And in terms of why we're here, you can just type something in here. You can just type in you know, the reason why you've come today. You're particularly interested in one thing rather than another. And when you type them in, they'll appear on the screen here.
You have to refresh the next slide, Doug.
Maybe I do. Let's have a look. There we go. So they're starting to appear there. So we've got some people who are eager to learn more on advanced digital skills. Some people just saying that they're interested in digital badges in general. Someone's head of digital badges. Excellent. They'd like to learn more. They want to apply digital badges within the LMS, learning management system. They want to understand micro-credentials, exploring digital badges for various reasons, seeing best practice, just general interest. Great, okay. Give you another 30 seconds to do that. I think you can scroll through these. Yeah, there we go. Someone's setting up a BA and wants to learn more about badges. Someone else is in Dublin and building OERs for SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Want to learn more about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. Interesting. We're not going to cover that today, FYI. Okay, can you still see my screen if I switch to the slides now? Okay, marvelous. There we go. This is make life a bit easier. So we've done that. I know who you are. I know why you're here. Let's just go through the benefits of badges then. Now, if you go to openbadges.org, which is now organized and controlled by IMS Digital Learning Consortium, IMS Global, who I'll talk about in a moment. Previously, it was Mozilla, like I said. These are the benefits of badges as they talk about them, and they break it down into earners, issuers, and developers. So primarily, based on who we've got here, I'm going to focus on earners and issuers. Now, an earner is someone who receives the badge, and an issuer is somebody who sends the badge to them, the person who's issuing that badge. And for earners, it's about providing evidence that they can do a thing. It might be a skill, it might be knowledge, whatever it is. So they might put forward that evidence to get a badge. They can also claim badges. So they can say, yes, I'm going to get that badge because I've been to that workshop or whatever it is. They can put their badges into a portfolio or backpack to be able to tell a story, and I'll say more about that later. And they can also share their badges on LinkedIn and various other places about what they've done, what they've learned, etc. From an issuer point of view, it's really interesting, and I think the majority of people here will be interested from an issuer point of view. You can start breaking down learning into much smaller chunks than before, and again, this is something I'll talk about in a moment. You can recognize learning based on proficiency, like getting to a certain level or being in the top 10% or whatever it is. You can say, well, okay, we've earned all those little badges. Now we're going to recognize it with a larger badge, like a badge pathway, again, something I'll talk about in a moment. And also you can recognize talent within your organization and try and retain that talent. We haven't got so many people from a technical background today, but if you do have those kinds of people in your organization, then you can build your own badge issuing platform if that's something you want to do, and you can integrate with lots of other platforms. Lots of those resources have already been built. We're 10 years into badges now. And so a lot of those things already out there. If you use something like Moodle, there's plugins, it's built in. Badges are built into Moodle, for example. You can put them into Canvas, you can put them into Blackboard, lots of things like that. So lots and lots and lots of badges have been issued, over 43 million according to IMS Global by the end of last year, and that is growing exponentially. There are lots of different types of badges as well, almost 500,000 different types of badges. And this is just based on 12 companies, 12 of the badge issuing platforms, of which there are more than 25 reporting data. So there are millions of badges floating around the world, helping people prove what they know and can do. Just a couple of very large badge issuers. One is the Open University in the UK. You might have seen their OpenLearn platform. This is wildly popular. And so people use OpenLearn to study for free on things that they're interested in. It's a win-win because the Open University basically get qualified leads onto their courses and sometimes do course fee reductions based on what people have already earned. And they've got all of these, what they call boxed open courses. And you can get a range of digital badges, micro-credentials, whatever you want to call them, for a whole load of different subjects. You can see there, I've highlighted digital literacy. Well, digital literacy was the subject of my thesis, and you can get a badge for doing stuff on digital literacy through OpenLearn at the OU. Another issuer of lots and lots of badges, millions of badges, is IBM. And IBM are on a bit of a mission to reduce the number of people who they hire who have degrees, which might seem like a funny thing to do, but what they're trying to do is to get people to have skills more quickly. So if I just go down onto this one, you can see that they've got IBM Blockchain Essentials. What they're trying to do is to use digital badges, micro-credentials to recognize learning and skills in new areas much faster than you could build like a degree course around, that kind of thing. So IBM have issued millions and millions of badges, and they're seen as very much a leader in this space when it comes to professional learning. If you've never been issued a badge and you're sitting there a bit sadly thinking, well, this is all well and good, Doug, but I don't even know what it's like to earn a badge. Well, if you've got these slides in front of you, you can click on this link. A guy called Nate Otto, who has been around badges since the start, he works for an organization called Concentric Sky, who are behind Badger. I'm going to go through Badger a little bit later. He has made a badge which is really easy to just claim. So you can go to this particular link here, and maybe you can do this now or later, and you can see what it's like to earn a badge. When you earn a badge, you can just store it on your computer if you want to, but most people put it in a portfolio or a backpack, as it used to be called, and you store those online. So if you're interested in that, have a look at claiming that badge. So in terms of what we're doing today, we're going to go through 10 things. We've done the welcome and why we're here, and I'm doing the session overview now. I'm going to go through what I would call a bluffer's guide to badges, like the minimum amount of information you need to know to get started with badges. And it's not technical information. It's like, how do you get started? What do you need to think about? That kind of stuff. Then we're going to go into breakout rooms just before we have a break in the middle of this workshop about how this affects us. And you're going to be in a breakout room with about 4 other people, and just to talk about, well, how could we use this? What would it be useful for? That kind of thing. Then we'll have a break. Then we'll go through badge issuing platforms, pros and cons, and the ones I tend to use, that kind of thing. Then we'll design our first badge, if it is indeed your first badge that you're designing. Just a nice, super simple one, just to get the ball rolling. Then we'll do some peer review. We'll share that. We'll be back in breakout rooms, and we'll kind of do some peer review of those badges and how we could make them better. And then we'll do some next steps. And I have got lots of links to share with you for you to do some further reading. And if you're like me and you're always keen to read ahead, you can have a look through the slides to see those. One thing I would say is I'm going to use a lot of imagery today from Brian Mathers. Some of you will know Brian's work. He's a good friend of mine. He's part of We Are Open Co-op. He's got his own business called Visual Thinkery, and he's doing another one of these seminar series as well as part of the National Forum funding. If you'd like to use any of his images, you're very welcome to. He releases them under a Creative Commons license, CC by ND. That means no derivatives, so don't crop bits out of it. That's what he hates the most. But you're very welcome to use these images if you want to talk about badges in your institution. So we've done the first bit. We're going to move on to Bluffer's Guide to Badges. I'm going to put the link to the slides on every time I do this kind of break in between sections. So if you haven't caught that link yet, that's okay. bit.ly/WIT badges. The capitalization is important. So Bluffer's Guide to Badges. And I've just realized I can't see the chat. So I'm going to see if I can open the chat at the same time in case anyone's got any questions. There we go. So as we're going along, if you want to comment, that's all good. And I'll try and answer your questions as we go along. Right. Scroll to the bottom of the chat. Cool. Ken, thank you for sharing that link to the badge. So let's get started. Bluffer's Guide to Badges. So let's start at the beginning. The reason that we have any kind of credentials is because your experiences, the things that you learn, the things that you know, they all have value. And sometimes you need to be able to show what you know and what you can do to other people. And sometimes we use certificates for that. So you can't see, but on my wall next to me, I've got my doctoral certificate. Now, a certificate, in my mind, is just an offline badge. Because if you go to someone like City and Guilds or an awarding body, and you say, I've lost my certificate, well, they'll give you a new one, either for free or for a fee. And the reason for that is because your credential really exists on a system somewhere, and they can just print you off a certificate. In the same way that your document these days exists on Microsoft Office or Google Docs or whatever, and then you print off a copy of it. So for me, a certificate is just an offline digital credential. That's my way of thinking about it. Now, a few years ago, my son, he got this particular certificate for doing some first aid. And the reason I found it really interesting is it was the first time I'd seen a certificate that kind of had some metadata in it. And what I mean about metadata is it kind of told you more stuff than usual. So when you flipped it over, it told you that the kinds of stuff he'd done on the course, which I thought was really useful. And it's the kind of stuff, it's the kind of data which you can put into a badge as well. Now, one way of thinking about badges is that they're a bit like the metadata that you get in photos. So here we are, here's a photo that my friend Brian took a few years ago when he was up a mountain with his family. And you can see here that it's got lots of data about the photograph. It's got the size of it. It's got the kind of device he took the photo on, the size of it, where it is, all that kind of stuff. And that's called the EXIF data. Now, that's a bit like the information you can put into a badge. The difference is with a badge, you can't then take the information back out. It's baked into it. It's like hard coded into it. Whereas with an image, you could just strip out all that metadata if you wanted to. And in fact, that's what happens when you usually upload the images to social networks. It strips out all the EXIF data. But with badges, what you've got is all of this data, all of this information inside the image. So it's not just a lovely image. It's actually got something baked inside it that you can't then get back out. So it's got, you know, the usual things like the name of the badge and a description and the criteria and all that kind of stuff. But it's also got who issued it, when they issued it, any tags, if it aligns with any standards, if it expires, if it's a kind of badge that expires, like a first aid badge might expire. And also, crucially, the evidence URL. A URL is just a place on the internet where you can find out what evidence it is. So I've seen this being used on building sites, for example, where someone wants to prove that they know how to do something, or on a hairdresser's, for example, they know how to cut hair a certain way. And that evidence URL links to a video of someone cutting hair or building a wall or whatever it is. It's a really valuable thing because it's not just someone saying, yeah, this person can build a wall. You can click through and see that they can do it as well. It's kind of a mini portfolio all packaged up in a little badge. So the reason that I got unreasonably excited about badges 10 years ago, and I'm still really interested, is because of these things here. First of all, they're evidence-based. It's not just someone trying to blag their way into something by saying, yeah, I can do it. It's evidence-based if you want it to be. Secondly, it's free and open. Anyone can issue a badge for anything. You don't have to be a higher education institution. You don't have to be a large company. Anyone can issue a badge for anything they want. They're stackable. You can say, okay, well, this badge leads on from this one, and you can kind of build pathways, which we'll talk about later. And then also you can transfer them. The learner or the earner themselves are in control of badges. So they can take their badges with them when they leave university or when they leave school. So you can transition between different places and take your credentials with you. So this is a bit of an older badge, but you can see here, this is a badge that we issued from the co-op for being co-op curious. You can issue badges for anything. And then this is a badge which has got evidence built in. So you can see here, there's an evidence field. You click on there and off you go to find out why that person was issued the badge. It could be a testimonial, it could be a video, it could be anything you want. Anything you can put on the web can be evidence for a badge. I can see someone saying the local swimming pool's been doing this metadata in its certificates for a number of years. Excellent. Now, sometimes people talk about the security of badges. And I would say if you trust, you know, your online supermarket, if you trust your bank to, you know, look after your data, then you'll be fine with badges, because the way that it works is that the issuer issues a badge to the recipient. The recipient can accept or reject that badge, and then they can choose to display that or not, and then people can view it. And when you put that badge somewhere for someone to look at, they can verify that that badge was actually issued to you. They can click through, there's like a verification link. Different platforms do this in slightly different ways. Some people use blockchain for that kind of thing, but you can verify that that badge was actually issued at that time by that organization to that person. So it's a pretty robust system. So because you can issue badges to anyone for anything, you can do what I would call new school credentials. So what this means is that in the past, I've got my BA, MA, PGCE, EdD, all of those big chunky credentials. But I've also got all these other little badges as well for speaking at events, participating in workshops, showing competency in a particular area, getting an award for something. And all of those are little verified credentials that paint a much better picture of who I am. Because I think LinkedIn, you know, Rolf's here today. Hi, Rolf. Is doing a better job of having a much more three-dimensional picture of who people are. But essentially, when we go and apply for jobs, we are quite two-dimensional, quite kind of black and white caricatures. And what I like about badges is that it shows that much richer picture of who someone is. And in particular, although you wouldn't think so when I do this kind of thing, I am quite an introvert. And so what I like is that you can find out much more about people than what necessarily they would offer. When I'm interviewing people for jobs, I'm often hiring developers and that kind of stuff. A lot of them can be very quite shy, and you can find out about people from, you know, their GitHub profile. You can find out from the badges they've done, a much richer picture of what it is that they can do. You can get clues about what they'd be good at from the kinds of badges that they're earning. So that's just a really interesting way of finding out more about people. So you can issue badges for anything. Sometimes when I run badge workshops in person, people are like, well, yeah, but what can I issue badges for? So here's some ideas. You could issue them for professional development. You could issue them for online learning. You could issue them for unlocking new possibilities or career transition. You could do them for on-the-job training and professional development. You can issue them for anything you want, really. When I was working with City and Guilds a few years ago, Brian and I were both working with them as consultants. What we figured out was that most of the badges that were being issued at that time were in these 4 areas. So membership, I belong to this group. I can prove that I belong to this particular group. Participation, coming along to this workshop, getting involved in a particular thing. Capability, I have reached this particular standard. All of these other people have reached this standard, and I have reached this standard as well. I have crossed that threshold. But also mastery. So I am in the top 5%. Yeah, I have achieved much more than other people. I have done this thing which is above and beyond, demonstrating that excellence. So usually the badges that we see kind of go into these 4 different categories. Now I'm going to put this slide up again at the end of this session when we're kind of getting into thinking about designing our own badges as well. Someone's asking if I'll get a badge for this particular workshop. It depends if Ken, under GDPR, can share with me the list of people who have come along. So open badges can describe your employment. They can describe all of the different things that you've done in your educational career. They can describe everything that you've possibly done if you can get someone to issue a badge for that. And I see a world in the future where we've got just a multitude of badges, and we start doing really interesting things. When something, Clay Shirky famously said, technologies become socially interesting when they become technologically boring. And I think badges are boring enough now, they're everyday enough for them to become socially interesting. And what I mean by that is that you can start doing things like team formation. So, you know, let's go even beyond the kind of diversity that we're calling for at the moment. Have we got the right kind of neurotypical kind of skills, neuroatypical skills going on this team? Have we got the right kind of leadership? Have we got the right kind of mix in this team? What kind of skills can we have to make sure that this is going to be as successful as we possibly can? Another thing that people often say to me is, well, how do you know what a badge is worth? What's a useful badge? And you'll see loads of articles around the internet talking about this. And really, the value of a badge, it's a bit of an equation, just like any credential is. So if I say I went to a particular university as opposed to another one, well, all of a sudden, my degree certificate is worth more or less than, you know, a different one. And it's a bit like that with a badge. So it might be, well, this particular badge or this digital credential was issued by this organization or this person, and that has a particular kudos. Also, I had to do this thing to get it. You know, I didn't just turn up somewhere. I had to do a 2-year course or whatever it is. Also, you can endorse badges and you can endorse digital credentials. So let's say you're issued a badge by me as a result of this workshop, and then Waterford Institute of Technology come along and then endorse that badge. Well, that adds another layer of verification, another layer of value to it. And also, it might be part of a pathway. So you might have had to do some other stuff to even earn this badge. So again, it might have value because you're halfway through a pathway or at the end of a pathway. So if you add all these things up and you have the built-in kind of viewer perception because they think the badges are useful or not useful, or they've seen this type of digital credential before, all of that added up together is about the value of the credential. So even if you're designing your digital credential system, you can't control some of these things. You can't control the viewer perception, for example. You can't control what, you can't control the reputation that your institution has, that kind of stuff. So when you're designing credentials, it's worth bearing all that in mind. I realize I'm going through a lot here, but I'm going to pause in a moment to kind of get you to go into breakout rooms and to think through some of these things. So when we're thinking about pathways, so a pathway is like a series of badges, however you want to organize that. And we'll talk more about that when it comes to going through badge issuers. You can think about this in two ways. One is a descriptive pathway and one is a prescriptive pathways. Now we in higher education, we do that all the time with prescriptive pathways. We basically have a prospectus and we say, look, these are the courses we do. And it's made up of these different modules. And if you go through them in this order, then we'll give you this credential at the end of it. And it's usually some kind of degree certificate or something like that. So that's a prescriptive pathway. In advance, we've decided what it is. But there's also descriptive pathways. And a descriptive pathway is when you've already done something and you're pointing back to it and you're saying, well, look, this had value. And sometimes people do that when they try and look at someone's career and try and deconstruct it. So a descriptive pathway can be just as useful as a prescriptive pathway. One way of trying to explain this using a metaphor is looking up at the night sky and seeing constellations. So when we look up at the stars aren't really in any kind of order. It's only because of what we think of when we're sitting there on Earth and looking up into the sky. And we match up all those patterns together. So those constellations and how we draw them, well, we could draw them in any order. And it's up to us to define them either as an institution or to define them as an individual or to define them as a department. However we want to break down learning and however we want to reconfigure it is up to us. And all of this kind of reminds me of how Khan Academy used to, I don't think you can still access this, but they used to make visible their knowledge map. So Khan Academy is a place you can go to. It started off just doing maths online. My kids have done a lot of this, but also they do other subjects as well. And they map together all of those little different nodes, all those little chunks of learning, and they map them all together. And it's a bit like a constellation. And you can kind of go from one to another very, very easily. And this is the kind of thing that I know that some organizations have started to do, especially in higher education. And it's a good thing to see because it means that you're not having just a march through a course. You're thinking about how it can be broken up differently. And of course, in the world of tech, people are already doing this. So this is my GitHub profile from a couple of years ago. And you can see here when I've been doing stuff, when I've been contributing things. So this is just like a heat map on different days of the week over different months of the year about when I was active on GitHub doing different things. And it's a bit like a constellation. You can imagine me getting badges for doing different things, meeting certain targets, participating in things. And the way that we configure that might come out as a degree or as some kind of credential or whatever it is. So the last thing I want to talk about, just before I give you some examples, is as a curriculum as algorithm. And this is going a step further as well. This is a bit that usually blows people's minds a little bit. Your curriculum is already an algorithm, but the algorithm that you're using is based on human perception. It's based on human expert knowledge and about the quality assurance that you've got in your institution. There's no reason why it has to just be based on existing human knowledge. There is a way in which you could make it more algorithmic in terms of computer-generated learning, that kind of deep learning, that kind of artificial intelligence as well. That's what Khan Academy is doing. It's basically saying, you know all this? Well, you can skip that bit, or you need to go back and learn this, or whatever it is. Now, if you see the curriculum as an algorithm, well, these are the things that you're going to need. You're going to need continuously curated learning content so that people have always got something to learn. You're going to need some kind of formative feedback so they can get better. That could be human or machine. You're going to need multiple pathways to diverse goals depending on what people want to learn. But crucially, you're going to need flexible accreditation. And I think that's where open badges and digital credentials do a great job, because all of a sudden you can credential anything that someone wants to learn. Now, what I really like about open badges, since we've reached version 2.0, I think we're on 2.1 or further now, is that you can do some really interesting things. You can make multilingual badges. You can start having badges to start off in English and then translate them into Irish and into Portuguese and what other languages that you want. You can have profiles really easily with open badges. You can have versions, and this is crucial. If you've never versioned anything before when you're doing curricula or when you're doing credentials, it's really important, because someone who earned a credential 10 years ago in a different system when the course was a bit different, it might have been harder or easier than it is now. And so as an employer, I want to know which version someone did of this particular credential. Was it easier? Was it harder? What did they have to do? And then finally, endorsement. That's what I was talking about before. Yes, this person has earned this badge from this organization, but has another organization said, we trust that issuer or we trust that person to be able to put our mark on it as well. So there's some really interesting things you can do when it comes to badges. If you want to find out more, we've got this thing called Badge Wiki. Anyone can go and edit that. It's a bit like Wikipedia for badges. You can find out more about what badges are, some examples, frequently asked questions, how to get started, all that kind of stuff. There's some outputs from workshops like the ones we've done with the Inter-American Development Bank, all different kinds of stuff. And I just want to leave you before you go into your breakout rooms, and maybe Ken, I wonder if you could start preparing them based on the number of people we've got, if we can break them into groups of about 5. When you go into your breakout rooms, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. I'm going to ask you to reflect on what you've seen that you think is good. That's kind of your green traffic light. The things that you've got questions about, that's kind of your amber traffic light. And the things that you're a bit concerned about, that'll be your red traffic light. So we'll do that in a moment, and someone will be scribe for your particular group, and they'll fill in a little kind of Google form so we can surface that out of the groups. But before we go into that, as we're preparing ourselves for that, just a couple of examples of things that I've seen where people have created badges which have kind of built up into a bigger badge, and that's added value. So a few years ago, I worked with London Connected Learning Centre on a series of badges for reaching some of the hardest to reach people in their community. And this was immigrant women who, because of their culture and their situation and their language skills, etc., weren't spending very much time outside the home. And also, they wanted to help their kids who were coming back from school with homework. They wanted to learn more digital skills. And so that is a particularly knotty problem to have when you've got people who are digitally excluded. How do you get them started? And so what we ended up was issuing a series of badges for the workshops that were happening at the center. And also what we ended up with was like a meta badge, a digital mentor badge, to build confidence, but also to then deputize that person to be able to go out and issue these badges as well. So if you were a digital mentor, you were being recognized for being able to help other people, and you were empowered to issue these badges to other people. So building that person's confidence and building the confidence for the people and scaling that particular badging system. The other one, which I often point to, is Sussex Downs College. Sussex Downs College had a problem, and their problem was that a lot of the people who left the college were staying locally in the local area, but they were getting feedback from local businesses that some of their graduates from their college didn't have the kinds of skills to start work immediately. So they worked with local employers to develop a series of badges around things like emotional intelligence, meeting deadlines, being reliable, having a positive attitude, all those kinds of things. And they issued these badges for meeting certain criteria. Then when you met those criteria a number of times and you got all those different badges, you got like a meta badge around communication, collaboration, critical thinking, or work readiness. And if you got all of those badges, then you got your Sussex Downs College employability passport. And they started doing really interesting things around that. Kevin from Sussex Downs, who was there at the time, he was going out and doing things like guaranteeing a job interview if you got a certain badge, that kind of thing. So really having like a cash value from the badges that were being earned. So I'm going to pause there, look at the chat. Someone's saying it's a bit like Scouts or Blue Peter. Ken's putting some things in the chat. Thank you, Connor, for putting Badge Wiki in the chat. That's all useful. I am going to get us to go into breakout rooms now. And what I'm going to just add as the meta question here is like, how does this affect us? How does what you've learned about badges affect what we do as a sector? And also, what does it do in terms of your institution? So, Ken, I'm going to put a link into the chat, which is going to be a Google Forms link. And all we want is one person from your group to fill that in towards the end of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next kind of 15 minutes having a bit of a chat. I'll drop into some of the breakout rooms. I might not drop into all of them. When we go into those breakout rooms, I just want you to introduce yourselves, say who you are, where you're from, and then just have a bit of a chat. It doesn't matter who takes control or whatever. Green is what you like. Amber is what questions you have. And red is what concerns you. That link in the chat there is to a Google form. I'm not expecting everyone to fill that in individually. What I'm expecting is just for one person from every group, just to capture what everyone's saying. Like, these are the things, this is the green stuff, the things that we think is good. Amber, the questions we have. Red, the concerns that we have. And then just to have a bit of a chat, what you think. And I'll drop into some of the groups, and then we're going to go into a break. So what I'll do is I'll call you back at about 20 past 11, but then we'll keep in the break for another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll start again at 25 past 11. So I'm going to pause because I've just given you a lot of information and then given you some instructions as well. And if you're unsure about what's about to happen, just say in the chat or feel to